Let's now talk to our resident foreign policy expert, senior fellow and director of the Center for Peace and Security in the Middle East at the Hudson Institute, Michael Doran. Michael, huge week in foreign policy this week here. Now, Biden had a phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu, his first one since those 7 aid workers were killed in an Israeli airstrike on Monday. He warned that America's support for Israel now depends on whether Israel can limit civilian deaths and increase aid into Gaza. Is Joe Biden subtly cutting Israel loose here?
James, hi. Thanks for having me. Yes, I think that the Biden administration is now really trying to bring the war to an end in Gaza. It really wants the Israelis to enter into a ceasefire, and it would like to then extend that ceasefire to November. That's not exactly the language they're using, but if you start adding up all the different positions they're taking, it's clear that they want this war to come to an end.
Yeah, and this is coming out as they're talking about the potential invasion of Rafah into consideration. It's still unclear, though, whether the talks are going to push Israel into delaying or canceling the planned assault there. But clearly, it would seem to me that if they do have this ceasefire, well, they're only going to allow Hamas basically to win and regroup, won't they?
Well, that's just the thing. I mean, this is what the administration is effectively calling for, is a negotiated settlement to the war, whereas the Israelis are calling for unconditional surrender and complete destruction of Hamas. If the Israelis do not take Rafah, then Hamas will stay alive to fight another day. It will continue to control all of the passages from Egypt to the Gaza Strip. It will retain a stranglehold over the economy of Gaza, and it will have an effective veto power over the attempt to build any kind of new order in the Gaza Strip. So it's not just one city we're talking about. It's really the difference between victory by the Israelis, and I think then for the West and the United States, or victory for Hamas and Iran.
But does the West even have that will to win anymore at this point? Because it seems like what Israel's choice now is either defeat Hamas and achieve a true victory and have no support left in many Western capitals, or wind up doing what they say and then, dying a death by 1,000 cuts and terrorist attacks over the months, years, and decades to come.
Well, Biden is certainly maneuvering the Israelis into a very difficult position. The problem he has is that the overwhelming majority of Israelis, this is on the left, on the right, in the center, they want the complete destruction of Hamas. And even if the Americans succeed in making Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister's life so difficult that they have new elections and another prime minister comes in, let's say Benny Gantz, Gantz will be under the same pressure from the Israeli public to defeat Hamas.
Yeah, and where's the danger now of this wider regional conflagration we've been talking about after the Israeli airstrike on Iran's consulate in Syria, killing 2 of its top commanders? Now, the U.S. has dismissed accusations that it had any involvement, but are we definitely going to see some sort of massive Iranian retaliation here? Does this lead to a bigger threat of a conflagration in the region that then the U.S. winds up inevitably getting drawn into?
Well, I think that the Iranians have to respond and respond significantly. This is almost what the Israelis did in Damascus, the attack that they carried out, and the blow to Iran is almost as great as the Trump administration's elimination of Qasem Soleimani, and to which the Iranians responded quite significantly. Remember, and at least with a strike that will be very eye-catching. Exactly how they're going to do it is not clear to me, but they can't let this slide. They may wait a little bit, try to carry out some controlled escalations to identify Israeli vulnerabilities and then hit them. But there will be a response. I think we can count on that. And will it lead to a wider conflagration? It's not clear to me, but I think the way you framed it is correct. Israel is fighting on the front lines against the Iranian alliance system and is defending the American alliance system The United States is trying to position itself in some kind of mediation position somewhere, not exactly halfway between Israel and Tehran, but putting some distance between itself and Israel in order to try to negotiate a settlement. I think ultimately they have to realize that we're in for a penny or in for a pound with the Israelis.
Yeah, and Soleimani, of course, was the guy the Washington Post, I think, famously called an austere religious scholar after he was killed. But the this whole issue with Iran you bring up, this is the much bigger issue, to me at least, because it does seem like the White House is playing a double game. You've seen Special Envoy for Yemen, Tim Lenderkin, saying that the White House could consider revoking the designation of Yemen's Houthis, who are backed by Iran, as terrorists if they stop their shipping attacks in and around the Red Sea. This seems like it's rewarding bad behavior, but Michael, it seems to be like the White House, the Democrats, and this whole Obama-Biden program on foreign policy is all about rewarding the bad behavior of Iran.
Yeah, the Biden White House is not following the basic rules of deterrence and just the basic rules of alliance management. So when it tells the Iranians, and they're saying it explicitly, we really don't want escalation. We will restrain the Israelis. We will remove the label from the Houthis and so on. We're sending to the Iranians a message that we really don't want to get involved in the conflict. And if the Iranians will escalate, our inclination will be to de-escalate and restrain our allies. That has the exact opposite effect on the Israelis that the administration wants, because it means to the Israelis realize that they are then out alone, and they have to send a message to the Iranians that they will not be restrained by the Americans, and they have to send a message to Hamas that they will continue the war. So whereas Biden thinks that by calling for de-escalation, he gets de-escalation, he really creates conditions that favor escalation on both sides.
Yeah, it's a terrible mess, but it's also playing out domestically now, because Wisconsin, we saw an interesting result here in their primary, 50,000 basically uncommitted votes in Tuesday's Democratic primary. Now, this doesn't really mean anything in the scope of things, except that it's an indication that there are a lot of Democrats who are unhappy with what Biden is doing and that they haven't gone far enough on essentially the abandonment of Israel. And we saw Karen Jean-Pierre basically say that they've changed their stance because of political pressure. Have a listen to this.
We've done outreach for this past several weeks, several months, to the Muslim, to the Arab community, Palestinian community, and heard from them directly. And they spoke, we listened, and we hope that they feel like they had an opportunity to express themselves and had an opportunity in front of the president and the vice president to talk about an incredibly painful time.
Michael, how dangerous is it that basically political affinity groups, religious groups, are now able to have such an influence on such a crucial piece of American foreign policy?
Well, if you're Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, sitting in your bunker in Gaza, and you hear the White House spokesperson talking like that, it just tells you, well, I need to hold out longer. I need to kill more Israelis. It just gives aid and comfort to the enemy, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely right and absolutely horrible. Michael Doran, thank you so much for your time on the U.S. Report.